Mara Kovacs never forgot her first taste of polar silence. The moment when wind, ice, and sky stilled together, as if the world were holding its breath beneath a lid of blue-white glass. That memory resurfaced now, 6 years later, on the eve of the Frost Reaper's most dangerous escort. She stood atop a ridge of pressure-stacked sea ice, staring down at the armored convoy they would shadow through 400 kilometers of contested, no-man land. 8 Thor-class crawlers idled below, each one a cathedral of composite plating and hydraulic legs. They carried geothermal cores the northern settlements needed to keep their hydroponic towers alive. If the convoy burned, 6 million people would freeze. Colonel Scifi Amonat, commander of the Frost Reapers, picked her way up the ridge, crampons cracking pockets of hoarfrost. "Briefing starts in 5, she said. In the dimming sun, her breath steamed, then vanished as her own cloak drank the heat. Like Mara's, Amonat's cape resembled black silk brushed with powdered stars, but its threads were latticed with superconductive veins and micropore capillaries. Cryo-clad fabric, the Reaper's signature weapon against eyes that saw only spectra. By absorbing ambient heat and bleeding it into the air in controlled pulses, the cloaks flattened each soldier's infrared silhouette to background noise. On sensor feeds, they became ghosts, wandering a field of static. Mara followed the colonel to a half-buried command sled where the rest of 3rd Platoon had gathered. 27 sets of pale eyes fixed on a holomap projected above a steel drum heater. The heater's coils blazed orange, yet no warmth escaped its mesh hood. The Reapers disliked waste. Sergeant Umbutu, a softly humming mountain of a man, toggled the holo so a crimson ribbon unfurled across the projection. "This," he said, "is the Svalin corridor. Enemy drones sweep it every 40 minutes. Our objective is to make sure the Thor train crosses unmolested." The enemy in question. The coalition of northern seaboards lacked the Union's heavy artillery, but fielded swarms of autonomous sled bombs and enough orbital satellites to watch every ice shelf from Barrow to Novaya Zemlya. Those they preferred to strike from a distance, 1 hypersonic round into a reactor core, 1 glacier's worth of shrapnel launched from a rail cannon ship. But satellite passes had windows, and those windows were why the Reapers existed. Colonel Amonat outlined the plan. 1st and 2nd platoons would ride atop the crawlers, visible deterrents in powered exo-rigs. Mara's 3rd would range ahead into the flanks, mapping crevasses and sniffing for CNS patrols. They would move as they always moved, in wide spacing, cloaked, silent, invisible except to the sun. "Remember," Amonat concluded, "the Coalition expects standard escort doctrine. They think we'll wrap the crawlers with jammers and hide under chaff. Instead, we're giving them a convoy that looks naked. That tempts them out. When they commit, we cut." She paused. "Be knives, Reapers. The ice won't forgive Noi." The platoon sealed helmets, their visors scrolling oxygen levels. Miara cinched her cloak over thermal armor, activated the weave. A tremor of chill kissed her neck as the fabric gulped her body heat and distributed it along diamond filaments. On her HUD, her thermal outline collapsed until the overlay registered null. She checked her rifle's supercoolant lines, then clipped 2 spider mines to her belt. Around her, the platoon shimmered. Within seconds, they were mere distortions in the blowing spindrift. The convoy rumbled forward, legs punching through skin ice, each impact sending booms that traveled kilometers beneath the crust. Even muffled by grav dampers, the vibration unnerved Mara. Seismic microphones could track those beats like sonar. She and Sergeant Mobutu trotted ahead, skating on grav soles just centimeters above the surface so their boots left no print. Southward, dusk swallowed the horizon. The sun would not rise again for 18 days. Only auroras would paint the sky now, ribbons of molten emerald bending to magnetic whispers. In that eerie half-light, Mara felt the old hush return. The same hush she had heard 6 years before, when her rookie fire team infiltrated a coalition staging dome and laid charges beneath a warehouse of cryogenic torpedoes. Back then, she'd thought the silence was fear. Tonight she recognized anticipation. A warning ping flickered across the HUD. Scout Mk4 bearing 312. Coalition drone. Mara tapped her throat mic. Eagle O, this is Ghost 3. Drone ping to starboard. Altitude low, vector suggests bathymetric scan. Amanat's voice crackled back. Copy Ghost 3. Maintain mask, let it pass. The drone skimmed overhead, a metal stingray festooned with antennae. Its lidar swept the ridge in white cones. The Reapers lay prone. Cryo-clad fabric sipped the last warmth from their breath until the air in front of their lips glittered with frost. The lidar beam washed over them, then moved on. The drone drifted inland, none the wiser. The fingerprints of its radar returned a clean canvas. Sergeant Mbutu exhaled. Every time it still feels like magic. Not magic, Mara replied. Math. She rose, scanning the ice for the drone's wake, a puff of snow settling where rotor wash kissed the ground. Let's keep moving. Convoy's gaining. They advanced through a maze of hummocks sculpted by katabatic winds. Some rose higher than cathedral buttresses. Mara marked a potential avalanche point on the map. One well-placed charge and an entire ridge could bury a mechanized column. She relayed coordinates to 2nd Platoon. 20 kilometers in, CNEX action finally surfaced. The Thor crawlers slowed as sensors flagged magnetic anomalies under the snow. Mines. The convoy commander wanted to detour west, but Amanat raised a fist. Reapers, clear the path, she ordered. 3rd Platoon fanned out. Mara toggled thermal to deep scan. The world turned indigo, punctured by red throbs where metal lay shallow. The mines were disc-shaped, wired to seismic triggers calibrated to crawler vibrations. Mara and 2 sappers crawled forward. They wedged cryocarbon rods beneath each disc. Snap froze the trigger housings and lifted them free. With each extraction, they affixed a Frost Reaper insignia scythe across white aurora before stacking the mines for later repurposing. The operation took 13 minutes. When the crawlers passed, Amanat informed Central Command the route was clear. An hour later, the night sky bloomed with artificial dawn-flaring magnesium and ultraviolet pulses. Coalition signal flares. Drones had rediscovered the convoy and were calling predators to feed. Colonel Amanat's order crackled. All platoons, implement shroud. The Reapers dove into deeper stealth. Cryo-clad capes extended hood flaps. Exo-armor vents opened to bleed residual warmth. Mara's chest tingled as her core temperature dropped 2 degrees. She watched her breath condense inside her helmet, then disappear as the internal recycler captured vapor to prevent any trace plume. North of the convoy, lights winked. 8, 10, 12 sled bombs racing low across the Strugi, each one a sarcophagus of tungsten packed with shaped charges. They were fast rocket sleds on monomolecular skis, guided by the drone network. Anti-armor turrets on the Thor crawlers woke and spat tracer gyros, but sled bombs weaved, changed altitude, used terrain. One slipped beneath a crawler's belly and latched like a squid. Ghost 3, Amanat barked. Sea suit on Crawler 4's undercarriage. You're closest. Mara sprinted. The world blurred. Gravity skates hissed across the ice, phase-shifting microwaves to maintain frictionless glide. She cut left, right, vaulted a rift. Crawler 4 loomed ahead, a walking fortress 30 meters tall, its legs dwarfed shipping containers. Beneath its belly, the sled bomb's mag clamps glowed crimson. Mara slid under the hull, slapped a nanoworm onto the bomb's control module, then flipped onto her back. Data streamed across her visor as the worm hacked the arming sequence. 30 seconds. 20. The bomb's timer gnashed at her with digital teeth. At 8 seconds, she gained root access, cut power, and delinked the signal node. The sled bomb sagged. Hitching a line, she dragged it clear, reprimed its detonator, and sent it whistling toward an approaching cluster of Coalition snowbikes. The explosion hurled a geyser of ice and shattered the bikes like sugar glass. Package disarmed, she reported, heart hammering. Good work, Amanat said. But the Coalition's just warming up. I have conflicting rad returns. Looks like an armored column pacing us from the east, inside the glacier canyons. If they stay parallel, they'll intercept near Grid August 9. Grid August 9 was a narrow choke point where the Rossfjord Glacier funneled between pillars of marbled blue rock. High walls on either side, perfect for an ambush. Emil, he turned to me. Colonel Amanat rerouted 3rd Platoon to flank through the crevasse network and get eyes. The temperature plunged as they entered the canyon. Walls glittered with trapped air bubbles, each one reflecting the low auroras in prismatic scatter. Their boots rang on hollow ice floors. Drips clicked in the dark like metronomes. Mara transmitted a ground-penetrating radar pulse. Shapes emerged. 7 Therion tanks, crawling beneath the glacier's skin, their tracks replaced with spike wheels for ice traction. Accompanying them was a command APC bristling with comms arrays, the brain directing the tanks. "Sergeant, see the comms dish," Mara whispered. Mbutu nodded. "We cut the head. The body wanders." But first they had to reach the shaft overhead. The walls were steep, 90 meters up, too long for a straight ascent in the open. Mara scanned until she found an ice chimney veined with crystalline fractures. She drove pitons and ascended, the cryocloak hugging ice like ink on parchment. At the rim, she belly-crawled to a ridge overlooking the column. The tanks idled, while engineers scanned the pass ahead. Clearly they suspected a trap. Mara unholstered a spider mine, primed its legs and set it scuttling toward the APC. It vanished into powder snow, homing on the comm dish's heat signature. Below, Mobutu's team placed seismic charges under an overhanging serac. The plan: decapitate the command unit, then bury the tanks under 1,000,000 tons of ice. The spider mine reached the APC's flank, jumped magnetically, and attached just beneath the dish. RQ detonation on her HUD. 1 heartbeat, 2, she whispered, "Ashes," and pressed. A violet flash ripped the dish to shreds. Immediately, Mobutu detonated the serac charges. The glacier wall moaned, split, ice blocks the size of habitats sheared free, tumbling like celestial dice. The tanks, bereft of orders, started firing blind. Laser-guided shells blew craters in nothingness. Then the avalanche hit, swallowing armor in silence so profound Mara felt it in her teeth. When the snow plume settled, only antenna fragments protruded from an ocean of rubble. "Column neutralized," Mbutu reported. "That'll send coalition recon satellites spinning," Amanat replied. "Now get back before they task a suborbital." The platoon double-timed. They rejoined the convoy south of Jokul Ridge. The Thor crawlers trudged on, their cargo humming like distant thunder. Mara allowed herself a sip of hot electrolyte from her wrist tube. She felt the heat trickle down, then sensed the cloak leach it away in moments. Every calorie was a liability. Hours passed. CNS chatter spiked on intercepted channels, panicked, fracturing. The Reapers had crossed half the corridor. Dawn, or what passed for it, would not come, but scheduled satellite sweeps would. They had a narrow window before orbital eyes adjusted for their countermeasures. Then the worst alarm blared across Mara's visor. Thermal sphere detected / orbital glide vehicle a kinetic kill weapon, dropping from the stratosphere at Mach 15. "Target?" Amanat demanded. "Crawler 1. The convoy's lead unit, carrying the spare reactor rods. There was no shooting down a glide vehicle at that altitude. Their only hope was to make the target matrix ambiguous. 3rd Platoon sprang away from the convoy, activating decoy beacons that flared in microwaves and IR, simulating crawler cores. Mara sprinted half a kilometer across open ice, planted her beacon, and dove into a fissure. Seconds stretched. A shriek of tortured air crescendoed. Then the sky split. A pillar of cobalt fire lanced down, blind and absolute. The impact vaporized a circle 50 meters wide and missed the convoy by 12. A shockwave punched the fissure. Ice walls trembled. Mara's helmet slammed rock. She tasted iron. Her cloak flared to full capacity, dispersing the heat ripples. When the rumbling subsided, she crawled out. A smoking crater lay behind her. edges glassed to green obsidian. "Convoy intact," came the word. "Good decoy work," Amanat said, but fatigue cracked her voice. "Regiment status?" "Casualties. 4 minor concussions, 1 broken arm. Overall strength? 96%. The Frost Reapers endured. The CNS would not relent. Minutes after the failed glide strike, high-band comms lit with coded chatter. Mara decrypted snippets. Operation Sickle. Full retreat. Regroup East Ridge. She suspected the coalition commander realized the Reapers were bleeding them with asymmetric cuts, death by frostbitten paper cuts. A final move was coming. It arrived at H-30, precisely 30 kilometers from Union territory. A swarm of kamikaze microdrones, each no larger than a gull, 2,000 iron beaks loaded with molten sodium vials. They emerged from shadow like black confetti, intent on stripping sensors and chewing cables. Anti-air batteries on the crawlers spat flak, but the drones were too many. That's when Colonel Amanat authorized the last arrow in the Frost Reaper's quiver. The cloak bloom. Cryo-clad fabric was more than passive stealth. Its micropore capillaries could, in extremis, flood themselves with stored cryogel, flashing supercooled mist out 27 Reapers. Triggered simultaneous blooms. A wave of nitrogen frost billowed from their cloaks, expanding like the breath of titans. Temperatures plunged 50 degrees in seconds. The sodium drones designed to melt through warm circuits entered a world suddenly colder than dry ice. Their chemistry failed catastrophically. They fell in clumps, hissing in the snow. When the mist settled, the ice plain was littered with inert black shards. The convoy rolled on. Mara swayed. Cryogel recovery heaters fought to keep her organs from freezing. Alerts blinked, core temp 35, 35 MC, 34.7 cc. Climbing slowly. She clenched her jaw to stop the chatter. Across the channel, Mbudu sang a slow griot hymn, a ritual he claimed kept the heart warm. At last, Union aerolifts appeared. 2 Valkyrie gunships whose contrails glowed in the aurora. They circled, confirmed no coalition presence, then dipped to escort. 8 kilometers later, the Thor crawler's navigation beacons pinged the Union perimeter fence. Blue strobes lit up, a coded gate opening in the EM bubble. They had done it. Mara stumbled to a halt as the first crawler passed through. Engineers on the far side cheered, their voices tinny over loudhailers. Reactor cores were offloaded. In a week, lights would burn bright in every greenhouse from New Narvik to Port Zephyr. Colonel Amanat assembled the regiment on a frozen knoll just shy of the fence. The aurora unfurled overhead, emerald scrolls on velvet. Amanat's cloak flapped around her as if unwilling to release the borrowed warmth. "Creepers," she said, voice barely above the wind. "Look." They turned. On the horizon behind them, the ice plain lay scoured, dotted with broken tanks, microdrone husks, and a single crater smoking against the stars. Yet no coalition beacon burned. No sensor could say who had carved that path. Only silence marked their passing. "You carried the cold on your backs," Amanat continued. "You made the night your blade, and because of you, millions will wake to heat and water and light. That is the measure of our war, not how many we kill, but how many we keep alive." She raised a gloved fist. The regiment mirrored her. Frost crystals caught starlight where their cloaks fluttered, shadows wearing the sky itself. Later that night, in a heated infirmary tent, Mara stripped off the cloak for maintenance. The fabric steamed as it met room air, like an animal sighing. She ran her fingers across the threads, feeling the faint thrum of superconductive arteries, still bleeding off gathered warmth. She thought of the silent hush on the ridge, the sound that had followed her from youth to now. It was not fear or anticipation, she realized at last. It was the world pausing to feel its own heartbeat, in the dark, waiting for the people willing to guard it. Outside, the wind quickened. Snow rattled the canvas, eager to bury tracks, to erase conflict, beneath forgetful drifts. Mara smiled. knowing the Frost Reapers would return to that vast mute expanse whenever the convoys needed shadow guardians. Until then, they would rest, repair, and remember that sometimes the cold itself could be an ally, wrapping them in secrecy while they escorted life across the edge of oblivion.